The Temple Mount is the site of the first and second Jewish temples. But for hundreds of years, it's been occupied by Muslim shrines. The Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Golden Dome of the Rock now sit on the site. But some Jewish people want to build a third Jewish temple.
After more than 2 decades of waivers, we are no closer to a lasting peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. It would be folly to assume that repeating the exact same formula would now produce a different or better result. Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has confirmed the president plans to reveal, quote, his deal of the century peace plan in April of this year.
President Trump's son-in-law and advisor Jared Kushner plans to travel to the Mideast today on Wednesday to jumpstart a U.S.-led peace effort. Kushner will spearhead the push for negotiations between the Israelis and Palestinians.
Donald Trump, throughout his career, has always relied on a very small circle of family and a couple of close associates. And in Jared Kushner, he has both. He has a family member as his son-in-law, and also Jared Kushner is a trusted advisor.
The effort will be led by Assistant to the President and Senior Advisor Jared Kushner.
President Trump has given Jared Kushner an extraordinary portfolio of responsibility. That includes bringing peace to the Middle East, reinventing the United States government, and many other issues.
Through the ages, he has been given many names. The Lawless One, the Beast, the Arch Deceiver. But most people know him as the Antichrist.
The most evil character in human history that will make Hitler and Stalin pale in comparison.
Senior advisor Jared Kushner is making his way through the Mideast this week. He's promoting economic portions of his Israeli-Palestinian peace plan during his 5-nation tour. Now, the Trump administration has called the framework the deal of the century.
He is at the heart of an apocalyptic vision of salvation and slaughter that millions of Christians accept as true.
40 or 50% of Americans say they believe in key elements of the end-time scenario, which includes the rise of the Antichrist.
He is the central figure in planet Earth's most popular doomsday prophecy, and some men say they recognize his personal profile.
If you're looking for the Antichrist, you look for somebody who's very attractive, very articulate, brilliant, someone who would know many languages.
This is an opportunity to pursue our common goals of security, prosperity, and peace. And Jared, I welcome you here in that spirit. I know of your efforts, the President's efforts, and I look forward to working with you to achieve these common goals.
Thank you. The President sends his best regards, and it's an honor to be here with you.
Well, we just had a historic trip. The President was greeted here with fantastic warmth. He made an indelible impression on the people of Israel, and it's good to see you again. Please send him our warmest regards.
I definitely will.
For their traditional family photo, we saw this. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Saudi Royal Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman enthusiastically, bam, high five.
We're following the latest on U.S.-Saudi relations as the Crown Prince makes his way through America. An explosive new report in The Intercept claims Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman boasted that Jared Kushner was, quote, in his pocket.
This comes just weeks after President Trump's son-in-law and top advisor had his security clearance downgraded.
I want to tell you that the Jewish people have a long memory. So we remember the proclamation of the great king, Cyrus the Great, Persian king, 2,500 years ago. He proclaimed that the Jewish exiles in Babylon can come back and rebuild our temple in Jerusalem. We remember 100 years ago, Lord Balfour, who issued the Balfour Proclamation that recognized the rights of the Jewish people in our ancestral homeland. We remember 70 years ago, President Harry S. Truman was the first leader to recognize the Jewish state. And we remember how a few weeks ago, President Donald J. Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Mr. President, this will be remembered by our people throughout the ages. And as you just said, others talked about it. You did it.
This morning, the Trump administration announced that all countries buying Iranian oil need to stop or they will be subject to U.S. sanctions.
Any nation or entity interacting with Iran should do its diligence and err on the side of caution. The risks are simply not going to be worth the benefits. And we've been working with major oil-producing countries to ensure the market has sufficient volume to minimize the impact on pricing. Both the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have assured us they will ensure an appropriate supply for the markets. And of course, the United States is now a significant producer as well.
Pastors, the ministers, the many friends who have come here from around the world, the many friends who have prayed for this day and have worked for this day. Thank you all. And of course, I want to especially welcome Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Your presence here today is a testament to the importance of this occasion, not only for the Trump administration, but in a very personal way, for you. For you, each of you, for the pursuit of peace, and for President Trump himself. Thank you. Dear friends, what a glorious day. Remember this moment. This is history. President Trump, by recognizing history, you have made history.
666 Fifth Avenue, a prime piece of New York City's skyline, just 6 blocks from Central Park. Jared Kushner decided to make it his trophy in 2007.
This was the deal that put Jared on the map. I think every dynasty wants to own a piece of Manhattan.
To get the seller's attention, Kushner offered a big price, $1.8 billion, a record at the time. And the 26-year-old CEO of Kushner Companies borrowed aggressively to get the deal done.
President Trump's son-in-law has a 41-story size problem at 666 Fifth Avenue. Jared Kushner's company still holds half of the $1.2 billion mortgage and hasn't paid a cent.
Jared Kushner, his big pet project was that 666 Fifth Avenue, that big office tower. He's going to tear it down, build something new, and he had to do a deal basically that gave it away.
And one of the first buildings he bought is this building, 666 Fifth Avenue. At the time when Jared and his company bought it, it was the most expensive purchase ever made in America of an American office building.
In Jerusalem, Abram passed the greatest test of faith and the right to be the father of our nation. In Jerusalem, King David established our capital 3,000 years ago. In Jerusalem, King Solomon built our temple, which stood for many centuries. In Jerusalem, Jewish exiles from Babylon rebuilt the temple, which stood for many more centuries. In Jerusalem, the Maccabees rededicated that temple and restored Jewish sovereignty in this land. And it was here in Jerusalem, some 2,000 years later, that the soldiers of Israel spoke 3 immortal words: Har Habayit Be'adenu, the Temple Mount is in our hands. Words that lifted the spirit of the entire nation. We are in Jerusalem and we are here to stay.
In December of last year, President Trump announced to the world that the United States would finally recognize the truth, that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. He also declared that we would soon move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and just 5 months later, we are standing on these grounds. While presidents before him have backed down from their pledge to move the American embassy once in office, this president delivered. Because when President Trump makes a promise, he keeps it. But today also demonstrates American leadership. By moving our embassy to Jerusalem, we have shown the world once again that the United States can be trusted. We stand with our friends and our allies, and above all else, we've shown that the United States of America will do what's right, and so we have.
It is a historic moment in the U.S.-Israel partnership. It'll be the first time ever that America's top diplomat visits the Old City officially accompanied by a senior Israeli official. Because of the status of the Old City, it's contested between Israelis and Palestinians. When foreign dignitaries visit, they usually do so with private guides. Remember, when both President Trump and Vice President Pence were there, they did not allow Israeli government officials to join them. Pompeo earlier today visited the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial and Museum in Jerusalem and helped lay a wreath. He also had a meeting with Israel's president, Reuven Rivlin, and pledged American support.
You should know that you have no better friend than the United States. Your point about the priority of our relationships is very real. We don't just talk about it, we execute it every day. It benefits each of our two nations. And I look forward to our conversation. You talked about Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all of these entities that present risk to Middle East stability and to Israel. They're determined to wipe this country off the face of the planet, and we have a moral obligation and a political one to prevent that from happening. You should know the United States is prepared to do that.
Now we're going to see the first arch to support the bridge. We will be under. Please.
So they are recruiting Christians around the world to be mobilized for the support of the building of a third temple.
As you look at the Bible and you look at the news,
It goes hand in hand. And to me, it's absolutely amazing.
Ready or not, here he comes. But is the Antichrist real or merely a delusion?
Donald Trump congratulated the Prime Minister, and he talked about the chances for peace after Netanyahu's win.
So the fact that Bibi won, I think we'll see some pretty good action in terms of peace. Look, everyone said, and I never made it a promise, but everybody said you can't have peace in the Middle East with Israel and the Palestinians. I think we have a chance, and I think we have now a better chance with Bibi having won.
It begins with a miracle they call the Rapture.
In an instant, those who are true followers of Jesus Christ, what the Bible says are born again, will be raptured, will be caught away into the heavens to meet Jesus in the air, and will be taken to heaven.
Imagine a huge percentage of the world just disappearing. If true believers disappear right out of their cars are going to crash. The planes are going to crash and boats are going to sink. You've got chaos.
Once the rapture happens, the worst period in human history happens.
The Rapture sets the stage for the Antichrist, who will appear as a savior and stabilize a world in turmoil. But ultimately, those humans left on Earth with him will be subject to unimaginable horrors.
People melting and their eyes melting and their faces being destroyed and them splitting up. That's in the prophecies. It's not going to be a pretty end to time.
We are on a timeline of history. The world did begin. The world as we know it will end, and there will be a transition.
The transitional period is called the Tribulation by adherents of biblical prophecy. It's part of a system of interpretation called dispensationalism, which is favored by some evangelicals and fundamentalists. According to their theory, there will be a 7-year period that culminates in unspeakable suffering that will be dominated by Christ's antithesis, the Antichrist.
Starting in the 1830s all the way up to the present time, there's been a rather consistent teaching about the Antichrist. They believe that this would be a personification of evil, a kind of messiah of Satan, who would gain power at the end of the present historical age.
He's unifying the world. There'll be sort of a one world government and a one world currency and a one world religion.
And God would then pour out horrible judgments on the earth against Antichrist, against his followers, and millions upon millions would be destroyed.
The world will be in turmoil, and the world will be looking for one significant leader that will draw the world together under the banner of peace and safety.
He will bring prosperity to the world. He will affect the economies of the world in a positive way.
He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week.
A biblical week, believers assert, is equal to 7 calendar years.
What really triggers the 7-year period of tribulation is the agreement that the Antichrist negotiates with Israel. It's a peace treaty for 7 years.
In the middle of the week, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering.
3.5 years into that, he will break that treaty.
He shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods.
His ultimate characteristic is pride. He believes he's better than God. He believes he's higher than God. He deserves to be enthroned.